It all started on what was supposed to be a quiet, peaceful weekend at my lake cabin, my little escape from the noise of everyday life. I had plans to fish, relax on the dock, and maybe even watch the sunset with a cup of coffee. But the peace didn't last long. Out of nowhere, my phone started blowing up with messages from neighbors, and by the time I got to the cabin, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There were strangers inside, moving furniture, acting like they owned the place. And standing there on the porch, arms crossed and smirking, was the one person in the neighborhood you never want to deal with, our HOA's self-proclaimed queen. Karen had always been the kind of person who treated the HOA rules like her personal law book, but this time she'd gone way past her usual petty power trips. She told me, without even blinking, that she had sold my cabin because I had too many violations. Then, to make matters worse, when I argued, she called 911 on me, claiming I was trespassing on my own property. I tried to explain, show proof, anything, but it didn't matter. She acted like she was untouchable. The whole thing felt unreal. One minute I was a cabin owner, and the next, I was watching my own furniture being loaded into someone else's truck while the police took Karen's word over mine. But here's the thing. I wasn't about to just roll over and let her get away with it. If Karen wanted to play dirty, I could play smarter. I started digging into the HOA's paperwork, the property deeds, and a few little-known loopholes that most people overlook. And when I found the one thing that could turn the tables, I knew exactly how to use it. Let's just say Karen's untouchable neighborhood was about to be touched in a way she never saw coming. Because if she could sell my cabin without my permission, I could sell something of hers. Something much bigger. And that's exactly what I did. To understand how things got so messy, you have to know a little about this neighborhood and the HOA itself. It's one of those tight-knit lake communities where everyone thinks they know everyone else's business and where the HOA rules feel like a second set of laws. Karen had been on the board for years, and over time, she managed to grab a lot of control. She wasn't just enforcing the rules, she was rewriting them to fit her own agenda. I'd had my fair share of run-ins with her before. Petty fines for things like leaving a grill out too long, or having a slightly overgrown flower bed. But nothing serious, or so I thought. The cabin, which had been in my family for years, was supposed to be a safe haven, a place to escape all the drama. Instead, it became the center of this unbelievable nightmare. The day Karen decided to sell my cabin, I wasn't just shocked, I was furious and confused. How could she even have the power to do that? It turns out the HOA had been slipping in shady clauses into the contracts homeowners signed without really explaining them. Tiny print that gave them authority over unused properties or violation cases in ways no one ever expected. I wasn't the only one caught in this trap, but I was the first to push back as I dug deeper. I found out something even more disturbing. Karen had been using her position to benefit people she was close to, almost like running a side business off the neighborhood. Friends got breaks, enemies got punished, and the rules were nothing more than a weapon. Meanwhile, the rest of us were stuck paying for it with our homes and peace of mind. That's when I realized the fight wasn't just about my cabin anymore. It was about standing up to the entire system Karen had built, finding a way to expose the whole thing. But how do you take on someone with that much power, especially when they've already twisted the law in their favor? I had a plan, but pulling it off would mean risking everything. And Karen? She wasn't going down without a fight. The next move was mine, but I had no idea what was coming. I started reaching out to other homeowners, quietly at first, trying to see if anyone else had been hit by Karen's strange version of justice. It didn't take long before stories started coming in, people whose properties were suddenly tagged as abandoned, neighbors who had mysterious fees slapped onto their accounts, and even a few who'd gotten warning letters about things that didn't even exist. It was clear Karen wasn't just targeting me. She was running the entire HOA like her own little empire, and anyone who questioned her was on the chopping block. But not everyone was willing to speak up. Some were scared, worried that if they pushed back, Karen would come after them next. Others just didn't want the headache after all. Living by a lake sounds peaceful, and no one wants to get involved in a neighborhood feud that could drag on for months or years. I understood that hesitation because I felt it too. But deep down, I knew if no one stood up, this would keep happening to more people. Then there was the police involvement. When Karen called 911 on me, claiming I was trespassing on my own property, it felt like the situation had escalated beyond a normal HOA dispute. The officers showed up, confused because legally I had every right to be there. But Karen's version of events was so convincing that for a moment, even the law seemed unsure where the truth really lay. It made me realize how much influence she had, not just with neighbors, but with local authorities too. Meanwhile, Karen was spreading rumors about me, saying I was difficult, a troublemaker, someone who didn't belong in the neighborhood. It felt like a personal attack, trying to isolate me and make it easier for her to control the story. But I wasn't backing down. If anything, it made me more determined. The tension was building. On one side, Karen, with her control and connections. On the other, me, armed with the truth, some research, and the support of a few brave neighbors. But how do you fight an entire HOA that feels rigged against you? And more importantly, what would happen if I tried to expose everything? The next move could change everything or make things a lot worse. Things were heating up fast. After weeks of quiet digging and connecting with neighbors, I finally found the leverage I needed. Technicality buried deep in the HOA's own rules and state property laws that Karen had completely overlooked. It was something that could undo her illegal sale of my cabin and maybe even expose the bigger corruption in the neighborhood. But getting to that point wasn't easy. Every step felt like walking through a minefield. I started preparing to make my move, knowing full well Karen wouldn't just roll over. Rumors spread that she was hiring lawyers and talking to officials, trying to build a wall of defense around herself. I could feel the pressure mounting every time I pulled up to the neighborhood, with Karen's cold stare following me like a hawk. The tension wasn't just in the air, was everywhere, behind every conversation. In every sideways glance, neighbors who had been silent before were beginning to whisper. Some showing signs they might stand with me, while others stayed firmly in Karen's camp, scared or loyal, unwilling to risk the fallout. It was clear this wasn't just about property anymore. It was about power, trust, and control in the entire community. And Karen wasn't just any opponent. She had built alliances, twisted rules, and convinced enough people she was the authority no one should challenge. One night, got a message from a neighbor I barely knew, someone who had always kept to themselves but had quietly been watching everything unfold. They warned me to be careful, saying Karen was looking for any reason to take me down legally, or worse. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a simple property dispute anymore. It had become personal. As I stood on the porch of my cabin, now under dispute, I knew the next few days would be critical. I was ready to hit publish on the biggest revelation yet, something that could shake the entire neighborhood to its core. But with every click, every move, I wondered, was I about to win this battle, or had I just set myself up for the biggest fight of my life? The calm before the storm was over. Everything was on the line. Just when I thought I had everything lined up and was ready to expose Karen and the HOA's dirty secrets, something unexpected hit me like a ton of bricks. A call came in late one evening from a lawyer representing the HO, and not just any lawyer, but someone connected to Karen's family. They said the sale of my cabin wasn't as illegal as I thought. According to them, there was some obscure clause buried deep in the HOA documents. 1. I hadn't seen before that supposedly gave Karen the right to act in emergencies like she did. They claimed my cabin had been abandoned for too long, which triggered their so-called emergency powers to sell the property. I sat there, stunned. Abandoned? I had been living there on and off for years. This was just another twist in a story that already felt like a nightmare. But it was clear Karen had been preparing for this. She'd hidden legal loopholes in the fine print no one else noticed. Suddenly, the fight wasn't just about proving she broke the rules, it was about proving those rules themselves were stacked against me and anyone who dared question her. Then came another surprise. Some neighbors I thought were on my side started pulling away. Rumors spread that I was stirring trouble, risking the neighborhood's reputation, and maybe even the value of their homes. Karen's influence ran deeper than I'd imagined, and her reach into the community was tighter than I'd guessed. The very people I thought would back me were now hesitant, scared of what might happen if they crossed her. I realized this wasn't just a battle over one cabin or one unfair sale. It was a full-blown power struggle in a community where silence had been